My brother sold our late dad's house without telling me. I drove 6 hours to my hometown to check on the house my brother and I inherited when our father died. I'd been meaning to visit for months, but work had been overwhelming. When I pulled up to the property, there was a young family unloading furniture from a moving truck. They looked at me confused when I asked what they were doing at my house. That's when I learned my brother had sold our father's home without telling me and kept every penny of the $400,000 sale. When I confronted him, he said I'd abandoned the family by moving away and didn't deserve any of it. The lawsuit I filed destroyed what was left of our family, but I wasn't going to let him steal my inheritance. I'm 32 years old, and my father passed away 2 years ago from a sudden heart attack. He was only 63, still working, still active, gone without warning. My brother Wesley and I were devastated. We'd both been close to our dad in different ways. I was 30 when he died, living 4 states away where I'd moved for a job opportunity 7 years earlier. Wesley was 34 and had stayed in our hometown, living about 20 minutes from our father. He saw Dad regularly, had Sunday dinners with him, was much more present in his daily life than I was. I felt guilty about that, about being the child who'd moved away, who saw Dad maybe 3 or 4 times a year, who'd chosen career advancement over proximity to family. Wesley made sure I felt that guilt too. During Dad's funeral, he'd made comments about how he'd been the one there for Dad, the one who'd driven him to doctor appointments and helped with yard work. He never said it outright, but the implication was clear. He'd been the good child, and I'd been the one who abandoned the family. Our father's estate was straightforward. He'd left a will dividing everything equally between Wesley and me. His savings and investments, about $80,000 after funeral costs and final expenses, were split 50-50. We each received $40,000. The house, a modest 3-bedroom ranch in a decent neighborhood, was left to both of us jointly. The will specified that we should decide together what to do with it, sell it and split the proceeds, or one of us could buy out the other's share, or we could rent it out and share the income. Wesley and I had discussed it briefly after the funeral. I'd suggested we might want to rent it out for a while, give ourselves time to process before making permanent decisions. Wesley had said he needed time to think about it, that he was too overwhelmed to make big choices right away. I'd agreed. We'd tabled the discussion and revisit it in a few months. Those few months turned into 2 years. I was dealing with my own grief while managing a demanding job as a regional marketing director. Wesley was handling the estate paperwork and sorting through Dad's belongings. We'd text occasionally, mostly about logistics and paperwork. Every few months, I'd ask about the house, and Wesley would say he was still thinking about it, still working through options. I'd visited the house once, about 6 months after Dad died, drove down for a weekend to walk through the rooms and remember. Wesley had met me there, and we'd spent a few hours going through Dad's things, deciding what to keep and what to donate. The house had felt empty and sad without Dad in it, but it was still standing, still ours, still waiting for us to decide its future. After that visit, life got busy. I got promoted at work, which meant even more responsibility and less time for personal matters. I kept meaning to schedule another trip down to discuss the house seriously with Wesley, but months kept slipping by. I trusted Wesley to maintain the property and let me know if anything urgent came up. We were family. We inherited this together. I had no reason to think he'd do anything without consulting me. Last month, I finally cleared my schedule for a long weekend and decided to drive down to see the house again. I didn't tell Wesley I was coming. I wanted it to be a surprise visit. Maybe take him out to dinner afterward and finally have that serious conversation about what to do with Dad's property. I'd been thinking we should probably sell it. Neither of us lived in it. The maintenance was a burden on Wesley, who lived closest, and we could both use the money to invest or buy our own properties. I left early Saturday morning and drove the 6 hours to my hometown, pulled up to Dad's house around 2 in the afternoon, and immediately knew something was wrong. There was a U-Haul truck in the driveway. A young couple and 2 small children were unloading furniture, carrying boxes into the house. The lawn had been recently mowed, and there were new shutters on the windows I didn't recognize. I parked on the street and walked up to the driveway, confused.
Maybe Wesley had decided to rent the house out and hadn't told me yet. That would be annoying, but not catastrophic. We could discuss it. The man carrying boxes looked up as I approached. "Can I help you?" he asked, friendly but slightly guarded the way you are with strangers on your property. "I'm sorry, I think there might be some confusion. This is my father's house. Well, was my father's house. My brother and I own it." The man's expression shifted to concern. He set down his box and called to his wife, who came to the door. They exchanged looks. "Are you related to Wesley?" the wife said carefully. "Yes, he's my brother. I'm Jenna." "What's going on here?" Another exchanged looks. Then the man said, "We bought this house from your brother 3 months ago. The sale closed 6 weeks ago. We've been renovating and we're moving in today." I felt the ground tilt beneath me. "You bought it from Wesley?" "Yes, is there a problem? We have all the paperwork, the deed, everything's legal and filed with the county." My mind was racing. Wesley had sold the house. Our house, the house we jointly inherited, without telling me, without consulting me, without giving me any of the proceeds. Was my name mentioned at all during the sale? The couple looked increasingly uncomfortable. "We didn't see any other names on the deed," the husband said. "Just Wesley's. Our realtor and the title company handled all the documentation. It all checked out." I thanked them and apologized for the confusion, told them to enjoy their new home, and walked back to my car on shaking legs. Got in, closed the door, and sat there trying to process what I'd just learned.
Wesley had sold our father's house without telling me, had somehow gotten it titled solely in his name, had pocketed what was probably hundreds of thousands of dollars, and had never mentioned any of it to me. I pulled out my phone and called him. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I didn't leave a message, just hung up and sat there, staring at the house that was no longer mine, watching strangers move into my childhood home, feeling betrayed and furious and completely blindsided. I drove to Wesley's house, a small ranch he owned on the other side of town. His truck was in the driveway. I knocked on the door, harder than necessary. He answered, looking startled to see me. "Jenna, what are you doing here?" "I just came from Dad's house, or what used to be Dad's house. Imagine my surprise to find strangers living there. Want to explain that?" Wesley's face went through several emotions: surprise, then something like resignation, then defensiveness. "You want to do this now? Here?" "Yes, Wesley, I want to do this right now. You sold our house without telling me." He stepped outside and closed the door behind him. We stood on his front porch, 2 siblings who'd grown up together, who'd buried their father together, now facing each other as adversaries. "I was going to tell you." "When? After you'd spent all the money? After it was too late to do anything about it?" "You weren't here, Jenna. You haven't been here. You moved away, built your fancy career, barely visited Dad when he was alive, and barely came back after he died. Why should you get half of everything when I was the one who actually took care of him?" "Because that's what Dad's will said. He left the house to both of us equally. You don't get to just decide you deserve it all because you stayed and I left. Someone had to stay. Someone had to be here for him. You were too busy with your important job and your big city life to care about your own father." "That's not fair, and you know it. I called Dad every week. I visited when I could. I loved him just as much as you did, and none of that gives you the right to steal my inheritance." "I didn't steal anything. You abandoned it. You made it clear through your actions that this place, this family, didn't matter to you. So I took care of it, like I've taken care of everything else." We argued for another 20 minutes, standing on his porch, our voices getting louder until his neighbor came out to check if everything was okay. Wesley told me I needed to leave, that we could discuss this later when I had calmed down. I told him I wanted to see the paperwork from the sale, wanted to understand how he'd managed to sell a house that was in both our names. He refused, said it was none of my business anymore, that the sale was done and legal, and there was nothing I could do about it.
I left before I said something I couldn't take back, drove to a hotel, and spent the evening calling every real estate attorney I could find who was open on a Saturday afternoon. Finally reached someone, a lawyer named Martin, who agreed to meet with me first thing Monday morning. I spent the rest of the weekend gathering every document I had related to Dad's estate, the will, the probate paperwork, anything that mentioned the house. I also drove to the county clerk's office first thing Monday before they closed for the weekend and requested copies of all property records related to Dad's address. The property records told an interesting story. The house had been in Dad's name until his death. Then, according to probate records, it had been transferred to Wesley and me jointly, exactly as the will specified, both our names on the deed. But then, about 6 months later, there was a quitclaim deed showing that I had signed over my interest in the property to Wesley, giving him full ownership. Except, I'd never signed any such document. I'd never been asked to sign anything related to the house except the initial probate paperwork acknowledging the inheritance. Someone had forged my signature, or Wesley had filed fraudulent documents, or something illegal had definitely happened. I met with Martin Monday morning and showed him everything. He reviewed the documents carefully, particularly the quitclaim deed that supposedly bore my signature. This doesn't look like a notarized signature. See here. There's no notary seal, no witness signatures, none of the required elements for a quitclaim deed to be legally binding. This should never have been accepted by the county recorder's office. So, what does that mean? It means the transfer of the property to Wesley alone was likely invalid, which means the sale to the new owners was conducted without your consent and without proper legal authority. You still technically own 50% of that property, and Wesley has frauded you out of a significant sum. Martin explained that I had several options. I could try to work it out with Wesley privately, though given his attitude, that seemed unlikely. I could file a civil lawsuit against him for fraud and theft, seeking my half of the sales proceeds plus damages, or I could report it as criminal fraud, though Martin said civil court was usually the better route for family property disputes. How much was the house sold for? I'd gotten that information from the property records. $425,000. So your brother essentially stole over $200,000 from you? That's not a small matter. This is serious fraud. I told Martin to prepare the lawsuit. I didn't want to do this to my brother. Didn't want to drag our family through court, but Wesley had made his choice when he'd forged documents and stolen from his own sister. He'd escalated this beyond family disagreement into criminal fraud. I was going to fight back. The lawsuit was filed 2 weeks later. Wesley was served with papers at his workplace, which was probably petty of me, but I was past caring about his comfort. The suit claimed fraud, sought my half of the sales proceeds plus interest, plus my legal fees, plus punitive damages for the deliberate nature of the theft. Wesley's response was to call every family member we had and tell his version of the story, that I was a greedy, ungrateful daughter who'd abandoned Dad and was now trying to steal money from the brother who actually cared for him, that I was tearing the family apart over money when Wesley had done all the work of managing the estate, that the house should have been his anyway because he'd been the one present in Dad's life. My phone started ringing with calls from aunts, uncles, cousins, all wanting to know my side or tell me I was wrong. My mother, who'd been divorced from Dad for 20 years, called to say that she was disappointed in both of us for fighting over money. Wesley's wife posted vague Facebook statuses about family betrayal and greed that were clearly aimed at me. I tried to explain the truth to family members who would listen, that this wasn't about greed. It was about theft. That Wesley had forged documents and stolen over $200,000 from me, that Dad's will was clear about his intentions and Wesley had violated them. Some family members understood. Most took Wesley's side, either because they were closer to him geographically or because his version of events, the dutiful son versus the absent daughter, fit their pre-existing narratives. The family split. My dad's sister supported me, having dealt with her own estate theft from a sibling years ago. She understood the principle at stake. Two of my cousins also backed me up, saying what Wesley did was clearly wrong regardless of who had been more present in Dad's life. But the majority sided with Wesley, or at least publicly. Privately, a few admitted they thought he was wrong but didn't want to get involved in the fight. The lawsuit moved forward. During discovery, my attorney obtained all the documents related to the house sale: the quitclaim deed with my forged signature, the closing documents showing Wesley as sole owner, the bank records showing the $425,000 deposited into Wesley's personal account. Wesley's attorney tried to argue that I'd given verbal permission for the sale, that I'd told Wesley I didn't care what he did with the house since I'd moved away. My attorney demolished that argument. Even if I had said such a thing, which I denied, you can't verbally transfer property rights. Written, notarized documents are required by law. Then Wesley's attorney tried a different approach, claimed that Wesley had paid for all the maintenance and upkeep on the house for 2 years and deserved to be compensated from the sale proceeds before splitting. My attorney pointed out that Wesley had never sent me bills for maintenance, never asked me to contribute to costs, and couldn't suddenly claim reimbursement when he'd stolen the entire sale amount. The case was strong. Martin was confident we'd win, but he warned me it would be ugly, that family lawsuits always were, and that even winning might not feel like winning, when it cost me relationships with people I loved. He was right. The lawsuit consumed my life for months. Every family gathering, the few I was still invited to, was tense and awkward. Wesley wouldn't speak to me at all. His wife would glare at me across rooms. Family members who'd taken his side would make pointed comments about loyalty and greed within my hearing. The emotional toll was devastating. I'd lost my father, and now I was losing my brother and much of my extended family. Over money, yes, but also over principle, over what was right and fair and legal. I lay awake nights wondering if I should just drop the suit, let Wesley keep the money, preserve what was left of family relationships. But then I'd remember the smug look on his face when he told me I'd abandoned my inheritance, the complete lack of remorse for forging documents and stealing from his own sister, the way he'd weaponized my career and my geographic distance to justify theft. And I'd realized that dropping the suit wouldn't preserve anything. Wesley had already destroyed our relationship when he decided his entitlement mattered more than my legal rights.
8 months after filing the lawsuit, we went to trial. It was a bench trial, just the judge hearing evidence, no jury. Wesley testified that he'd believed I didn't want anything to do with the house or the estate, that I'd made that clear through my absence and lack of involvement. My attorney showed emails and texts where I'd repeatedly asked about the house, and Wesley had told me he was still deciding what to do. Hard to claim I'd abandoned something I'd been actively inquiring about. The handwriting expert testified that the signature on the quitclaim deed didn't match my verified signatures on other documents. It was an obvious forgery, and not even a good one. Wesley couldn't explain how my signature had ended up on a document I'd never signed. His attorney tried to suggest maybe I'd signed it and forgotten. But when pressed, Wesley admitted under oath that he'd handled the paperwork for the deed transfer. The judge's ruling came 2 weeks after trial ended. She found in my favor on every count. Wesley had committed fraud by forging documents to transfer property that belonged to both of us. The sale had been conducted without my knowledge or consent. I was entitled to half the sale proceeds, $212,500, plus interest from the date of sale, plus all my legal fees, which had reached about $40,000. The judge also awarded punitive damages of $50,000 given the deliberate and fraudulent nature of Wesley's actions. Total judgment, over $300,000 that Wesley owed me. Wesley didn't have that kind of money liquid. He'd spent a significant portion of the house sale proceeds on renovations to his own home, a new truck, and various other purchases. He'd have to take out loans, possibly sell his own house to pay the judgment. I felt no satisfaction in winning, just exhaustion and sadness. My brother had stolen from me, lied to my face, turned my family against me, and I'd been forced to sue him to get justice. Even with a legal victory, I'd lost so much. The family reaction to the judgment was predictably split. Those who'd supported me felt vindicated.
Those who'd supported Wesley said the judge didn't understand family dynamics, that Wesley had been unfairly punished for stepping up when I'd stepped away. Wesley himself sent me a single text. "I hope you're happy. You've destroyed our family over money." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. He'd destroyed our family when he'd forged my signature and stolen my inheritance. The lawsuit had just made that destruction visible and official. Wesley paid the judgment in installments over the following year. He did have to sell his house and downsize to a smaller rental. His wife filed for divorce 6 months into the payment plan, citing financial stress. I heard through family that she blamed me for ruining their lives, never mind that her husband's fraud was the actual cause. I used my settlement money to buy my own house in the city where I lived. It was bittersweet. This was money from Dad's estate that should have been mine all along, but it came at the cost of my relationship with my brother and much of my family. Dad would have been heartbroken to see what his death had triggered, how his 2 children had ended up in court destroying each other. It's been 2 years since the judgment. Wesley and I haven't spoken except through attorneys finalizing the payment arrangements. Most of the family has chosen sides and stayed there. Thanksgiving and Christmas are now separate celebrations. Wesley goes to one aunt's house, I go to another's, and never shall the 2 sides meet. My therapist says I did the right thing, that I set necessary boundaries and held someone accountable for theft regardless of family ties, that letting Wesley get away with it would have sent a message that family can steal from you without consequences. She's probably right, but it still hurts. I think about my father sometimes and wonder what he would have wanted. Would he have wanted me to fight for what was legally mine or to let it go to preserve family peace? Would he have been proud of me for standing up for myself or disappointed that I took his son to court? I'll never know, but I know what his will said. He wanted his estate split equally between his children. Wesley violated that clear directive, and I held him accountable. I'm 34 now. I have a beautiful house that I own outright thanks to my inheritance finally being realized. I have a successful career. I have friends and relationships with the family members who understood why I'd filed suit. What I don't have is a brother. That loss still aches in quiet moments. Sometimes I drive by the house where Dad lived, where Wesley sold out from under me. The young family is still there. They've added a swing set in the backyard and painted the front door yellow. They had no idea they were buying into a family war. I'm glad they got a good house. Glad something positive came out of this disaster. That's my story. The brother who sold our inheritance without telling me, the forged documents and theft of over $200,000, the lawsuit that split my family and destroyed what was left of my relationship with my only sibling, the Pyrrhic victory of being proven legally right while losing so much else. I won in court, but I'm not sure anyone really won anything.